The sound of glass shattering echoed through the dusty main street of Cottonwood Springs as Katherine O'Malley crashed through the window of the Silver Dollar Saloon, her body crumpling in a heap on the wooden boardwalk. Blood trickled from her split lip, and her honey-brown hair had come loose from its pins, falling in disarray around her bruised face. It was the spring of 1876, and Catherine Kate, to those who knew her, had just made the terrible mistake of refusing the advances of Silas Thornton, the wealthiest cattle baron in the Arizona Territory. For weeks, he'd been pursuing her relentlessly, sending expensive gifts to the small millinery shop where she worked, making increasingly bold propositions. Tonight, he'd cornered her as she cleaned up after hours at the saloon where she served drinks to supplement her meager income. "No decent man will have you now," Silas snarled, following her through the broken window, his face contorted with rage. His expensive boots crunched on shattered glass as he advanced toward her. "I offered you everything, you ungrateful." He raised his hand to strike her again, but the blow never landed. A tall figure stepped between them, catching Silas's wrist mid-swing with a grip like iron. "That's enough," came a quiet voice, deep and steady as a summer creek. Kate, dazed and trembling, looked up at her defender. He stood with his back to the setting sun, casting his face in shadow, but she could make out broad shoulders under a worn leather vest, a bandana knotted at his throat, and a weathered Stetson pulled low over his eyes. "This ain't your business, cowboy," Silas spat, trying unsuccessfully to wrench his arm free. "The lady and I were just having a discussion." "Doesn't look much like a discussion to me." The cowboy's grip tightened and Silas winced. "Where I come from, men don't hit women." A small crowd had begun to gather, keeping a cautious distance. Kate could feel their eyes on her, judgmental and curious. She tried to push herself up, but pain shot through her ribs, forcing her back down with a gasp. "You know who I am, boy," Silas's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Don't much care." The cowboy finally released Silas's wrist with a shove that sent the older man stumbling backward. "I suggest you walk away now." Silas straightened his expensive vest, his eyes cold as a winter night. "This isn't over." He glanced at Kate, then back to the cowboy. "Not by a long shot." With a final venomous glare, he turned and stalked away, the crowd parting before him like water. Only when Silas disappeared around the corner did the cowboy turn to Kate. She could see his face, now younger than she'd expected, perhaps 25 or 26, with features that might have been carved from the red rocks surrounding the town. His eyes were the deep blue of a mountain lake, creased at the corners from squinting against the harsh western sun. "Can you stand, madam?" he asked, crouching beside her. Kate tried again, gritting her teeth against the pain. "I think so," she managed, though her body disagreed. Without another word, the cowboy slipped an arm around her waist and helped her to her feet. When her knees buckled, he swept her up into his arms as effortlessly as if she were made of cotton and lace. "I've got you," he murmured, his voice gentler now. "Name's Beau Blackburn. I'm going to get you somewhere safe." Kate wanted to protest. She didn't know this man. After all, but the world was beginning to spin around her, and the safety of his arms felt like the only solid thing in a suddenly unsteady universe. Her head fell against his shoulder as consciousness slipped away. When Kate awoke, it was to the crackle of a low fire and the scent of coffee. She lay on a narrow bed in a small, tidy cabin she didn't recognize. A worn quilt had been tucked around her, and a damp cloth rested on her forehead. Every inch of her body ached, but she was alive and for the moment safe. "You're awake." The deep voice startled her. The cowboy Beau sat in a chair near the fire, whittling something with a small knife. He set aside his work and poured coffee into a tin cup. "Thought you might need this when you came to." Kate pushed herself up on her elbows, wincing. "Where am I?" "My place, about 2 miles outside of town." He approached cautiously, like she was a spooked horse, and offered the steaming cup. "Doc Sullivan's been and gone. Says you've got 2 cracked ribs and a fair amount of bruising, but nothing that won't heal with time." Kate accepted the coffee with shaking hands. "You brought a doctor." Seemed like the right thing to do. Beau returned to his chair, giving her space. He left some laudanum for the pain if you need it. She sipped the coffee, strong and black, letting its warmth spread through her. Mr. Blackburn, just Beau is fine. Beau, then, I thank you for your intervention, but I should go. I have a room in town and my employer will be wondering where I am. Mrs. Holloway at the hat shop. Beau's mouth curved slightly. Doc sent word to her. She knows you're safe and said to take all the time you need. Kate frowned. How did you know I work for Mrs. Holloway? Small town. He shrugged, and I've bought a hat or two in my time. She tried to remember seeing him in the shop but couldn't place him. Of course, she'd only been in Cottonwood Springs for 6 months, and she spent most of her days with her head down, focused on her work. What about? She hesitated, not wanting to speak Silas's name. Thornton. Beau's expression darkened. He's still in town, far as I know, but he won't find you here. He stood, moving to a pot simmering on the small iron stove. You should eat something, it's just stew, but it's hot. Kate wanted to refuse, to insist on leaving, but the reality of her situation was beginning to settle in. She had nowhere safe to go. Silas Thornton practically owned Cottonwood Springs. His men were everywhere, and he wasn't a man who took rejection or humiliation lightly. The thought of facing him again made her stomach clench with fear. Why are you helping me? She asked as Beau placed a bowl of stew on the small table beside the bed. He considered this for a moment, his expression unreadable. My ma raised me to step in when something ain't right. What Thornton was doing wasn't right. A shadow passed over his face. I've seen what men like him can do when nobody stands up to them. There was a story there Kate could tell, but it wasn't her place to pry. Instead, she said simply, thank you. Beau nodded and turned back to his whittling, leaving her to eat in peace. The stew was simple but flavorful chunks of venison, wild onions, and potatoes in a rich broth. Kate hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first spoonful touched her lips. As she ate, she studied her surroundings more carefully. The cabin was small but well built, with tight-fitting logs and a plank floor swept clean. A rifle hung above the door alongside a worn saddle on a stand. A bookshelf held more volumes than she would have expected, their spines creased with use. On the table where Beau sat lay a scattering of wooden animals, a deer, a fox, a hawk with its wings spread, all carved with remarkable skill. These are beautiful, she said, nodding toward the carvings. Beau glanced up, almost embarrassed. Just a way to pass the time. You're talented. She finished her stew and set the bowl aside. Did you learn from someone, my grandfather? Something in Beau's face softened at the memory. He could make just about anything with a piece of wood and a sharp knife. He fell silent for a moment, then cleared his throat. You should rest, Miss O'Malley. Doctor's orders. Kate wanted to ask how he knew her surname too, but exhaustion was beginning to pull at her again. She settled back against the pillow, watching as Beau added another log to the fire. In the dancing light, his profile was strong and steady, like something from a painting of frontier heroes. I can't stay here long, she murmured, her eyelids growing heavy. People will talk. Beau's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. Let them. I've never much cared what people say. As sleep claimed her again, Kate thought that must be a luxury, not caring what others thought. For a woman alone in the West, reputation was everything. And hers, she feared, might already be beyond salvaging. The next few days passed in a haze of pain and healing. Beau was an unexpectedly considerate host, giving Kate space when she needed it and company when the silence grew too heavy. He brought her books from his collection, novels by Dickens and Twain that she'd never had time to read, and listened with genuine interest when she talked about her life before Cottonwood Springs. She'd come west from Boston after her parents died of influenza, leaving her with nothing but debts and painful memories. Her aunt in Chicago had taken her in briefly, but when her cousin had started making unwelcome advances, Katherine had packed her few belongings and boarded a train west, determined to make her own way in the world. Brave thing to do, Beau commented one evening as they shared a meal of rabbit stew. He'd begun taking his meals at the table beside her bed, claiming it was easier than moving her to the table. Kate shook her head. Not brave, desperate maybe, foolish certainly. Takes courage to leave everything familiar behind. Beau broke a piece of cornbread and handed half to her. Most folks just endure what they know, even when it's killing them slow. Is that why you're out here? Kate asked. Running from something? Beau's eyes met hers, clear and direct. Not running from, running to. He took a sip of coffee. My pa was a rancher up in Wyoming territory. Good man, worked hard, built something worth having. When he died, my older brother took over. He and we see things different. Different how? Beau considered this. He believes a man's worth is measured by what he owns. I reckon it's measured by what he does. He shrugged. So I left, worked cattle drives, broke horses, did what needed doing, saved enough to buy this place last year. Kate glanced around the cabin. It's a fine home. It's a start. Beau's gaze drifted to the window, where the last light of day painted the distant mountains gold. Got 40 acres, a small herd of cattle, good water. It's enough for now. There was something in his voice, a quiet determination, a vision of something more that Kate found herself admiring. This was a man with a plan, building something piece by piece with his own 2 hands. On the 4th day, Kate was strong enough to move around the cabin, though her ribs still ached with each breath. She insisted on helping with the cooking, if only to feel useful, and Beau showed her how to make sourdough biscuits from the starter he kept by the stove. My grandmother's, he explained, scooping the bubbling mixture with care. Been alive longer than I have. As they worked side by side in the small kitchen area, Kate became acutely aware of his presence, the breadth of his shoulders, the careful precision of his calloused hands, the faint scent of leather and pine that seemed to surround him. When their fingers brushed as she passed him the flour, a warmth that had nothing to do with the stove spread through her. Disturbed by these feelings, Kate retreated to safer ground. I need to return to town soon, she said, focusing intently on the dough she was kneading. Mrs. Holloway has been more than understanding, but I can't impose on her kindness or yours indefinitely. Beau's hands stilled. You think Thornton's forgotten about you in 4 days? No, she admitted, but I can't hide forever. It's not hiding to keep yourself safe. Beau's voice had an edge to it now. Thornton's not a man who forgives easily. He's been asking around town about you, about me. Kate's stomach dropped. How do you know? I rode in yesterday while you were resting, needed supplies. He wiped his hands on a cloth. Thornton's offering a reward for information about your whereabouts. A reward? Kate's voice rose in disbelief. As if I were a lost dog or a criminal. He's claiming you stole something valuable from him. Beau's eyes were grave. A family heirloom, he says. That's absurd. I never took anything from him. The injustice of it made her voice shake. He's the thief. He tried to steal my dignity, my choice. I know. Beau's voice was gentle. But Thornton has money and influence. His version of events will be the one most folks believe unless we can prove otherwise. Kate sank onto a chair, her legs suddenly weak. What am I going to do? I can't stay here forever, but I can't go back to town if people think I'm a thief. Beau was quiet for a long moment. There's another option, he said finally. My friend Jake Russell runs a stage line out of Tucson. He owes me a favor. I could send word, ask him to help you get to California or maybe up to Denver. The thought of starting over again, alone in another strange city, sent a wave of exhaustion through Kate. She'd been running for so long. And what would I do there? I have no money, no connections. I'd see that you had enough to get established, Beau said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world to offer a near stranger his hard-earned savings. Kate stared at him. Why would you do that? Beau met her gaze steadily. Because it's the right thing to do. Something in his simple statement brought tears to Kate's eyes. In a world that had shown her mostly coldness and calculation, Beau Blackburn's straightforward decency was almost too much to bear. I can't accept your money, she said, blinking back tears. You've done enough already. Beau opened his mouth to argue, but a sound from outside silenced him, the distant thunder of approaching hooves. In an instant, his entire demeanor changed. He moved to the window, peering cautiously through the curtain. Riders coming, he said, his voice low and tense. 4 of them. Kate's heart raced. Thornton? Can't tell yet. Beau crossed to the rifle above the door and took it down in one fluid motion. But we're not taking chances. Can you ride? Yes, but there's a trail through the back pasture that leads up into the hills. He was already moving, grabbing a saddlebag and stuffing it with essentials food, a canteen, matches. "My horse Samson is in the corral. He's steady, won't give you trouble." "You're sending me away, alone." The thought terrified her. Beau paused, meeting her eyes. "I'll buy you time. Draw them off if I can. There's a line shack about 5 miles up the trail. Wait for me there." "And if you don't come," Kate could barely form the words. Beau pressed something into her hand, a small wooden carving of a hummingbird, wings frozen in mid-flight. "Then keep this to remember that not all men are like Thornton." Before Kate could respond, the riders came into view through the window. Even in the fading light, there was no mistaking the elegant black coat and distinctive white stallion of Silas Thornton. 3 of his ranch hands flanked him, all armed. "Go," Beau urged, guiding Kate toward the back door. "Stay low, keep to the trees until you reach the corral." "I can't leave you to face them alone," Kate protested. "This is my fight, not yours." "It became mine the moment I stepped between you and Thornton's fist." Beau's hand was warm on her arm. "Trust me, Katherine, I can handle myself." The use of her full name, spoken with such quiet intensity, silenced her protests. She nodded once, clutching the wooden hummingbird tightly, and slipped through the back door into the gathering dusk. The pine trees behind Beau's cabin provided cover as Kate made her way cautiously toward the small corral. She could hear Thornton's voice now, carrying on the evening air. "Blackburn, I know she's here. Hand her over and we'll forget this unfortunate misunderstanding." Kate couldn't make out Beau's response, but Thornton's laugh, cold and mirthless, sent a shiver down her spine. She reached the corral, where a sturdy buckskin gelding regarded her with curious eyes. Moving slowly, she unlatched the gate and approached him, murmuring softly as Beau had taught her to do with nervous animals. To her relief, Samson stood calmly as she led him out and swung awkwardly into the saddle, her ribs protesting the movement. Just as she turned the horse toward the narrow trail Beau had described, a gunshot shattered the twilight stillness. Kate froze, her heart in her throat. Every instinct screamed at her to go back to see if Beau was hurt, but his words echoed in her mind. "Trust me." With a silent prayer, she urged Samson forward, guiding him up the rocky trail into the darkening hills. The line shack was exactly where Beau had said it would be, nestled in a small clearing beneath towering pines. It was little more than a one-room shelter with a stone fireplace, used by cowboys during the roundup season. Kate unsaddled Samson with difficulty, her hands shaking and her ribs aching, and led him to a small spring-fed pool nearby. Inside the shack, she found a store of firewood and basic supplies: salt, coffee, beans, even a few candles. She built a small fire, more for comfort than warmth in the mild spring night, and settled in to wait, clutching Beau's rifle and listening intently for any sound of pursuit. Hours passed. The moon rose, casting silver light through the single window. Kate fought to stay awake, fear and worry gnawing at her. What if Thornton had killed Beau? What if he was searching the hills for her right now? What if Beau was wounded, bleeding out somewhere on the trail, and she was hiding here instead of helping him? Just before dawn, as the eastern sky began to lighten, she heard the soft nicker of a horse greeting another of its kind. Kate was on her feet instantly, Beau's rifle aimed at the door, her finger trembling on the trigger. "Katherine," Beau's voice low and cautious. "It's me." She lowered the rifle, relief washing over her like a wave. "I'm here." The door opened and Beau stepped inside, silhouetted against the pre-dawn sky. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Kate was moving toward him, and his arms were around her, solid and real, his heart beating steady against her cheek. "I thought they might have killed you," she whispered, her voice breaking. Beau's hand came up to cradle the back of her head. "Takes more than Thornton and his boys to do that." He drew back slightly, his eyes searching her face. "Are you all right?" Kate nodded, suddenly aware of how close they were standing, of the warmth of his body against hers, of the way his eyes reflected the dying firelight. "What happened?" "I heard a shot." Beau guided her to a rough-hewn bench by the fire, keeping one arm around her shoulders. "Thornton tried to force his way in. When I blocked him, one of his men got trigger-happy. His mouth quirked in a humorless smile. Shot a hole in my door is all." "Then what?" I convinced them you weren't there, said I hadn't seen you since that day in town. Beau's eyes were troubled. They searched the cabin anyway, but by then you were long gone. Did they believe you? Thornton didn't, but he couldn't prove otherwise. Beau ran a hand through his hair, disheveled from the night ride. He made it clear, though he's not giving up, says you took something that belongs to him. I told you I know. Beau's voice was gentle, but Thornton's pride is wounded. That makes him dangerous. Kate stared into the embers of the fire. So what happens now? We have options. Beau's thumb traced small circles on her shoulder, a gesture so comforting and intimate that Kate found herself leaning into it. We could still get you on Jake's stage line, or, he hesitated. There's a ranch up north near Flagstaff, belongs to my friend Sam Miller and his wife. They'd take you in, give you work, keep you safe until Thornton loses interest. And how long would that be? Kate asked, though she already knew the answer. Beau sighed. Men like Thornton don't forget easily. They sat in silence for a moment, watching as the first rays of sun pierced the window, painting the rough wooden walls with gold. There's a third option, Kate said finally. I could face him, confront him publicly before the whole town. Make it clear I took nothing from him except the right to refuse his advances. Beau's arm tightened around her. That's too risky. Thornton has half the county in his pocket, including Sheriff Davis. Then what do you suggest? That I spend the rest of my life running, hiding? Kate turned to face him fully. I came west to build a life of my own, Beau, not to live in fear of men like Silas Thornton. Something flickered in Beau's eyes, respect, admiration, perhaps something more. You're braver than most men I know, Katherine O'Malley. Not brave, she echoed his words from days before. Desperate, maybe, stubborn, certainly. A slow smile spread across Beau's face, transforming his serious features. Stubborn is good. Stubborn survives out here. Kate found herself returning his smile, drawn to the warmth in his eyes, the steadiness of his presence. In that moment, with the new day breaking around them, she realized something had shifted between them, something neither of them had expected when he'd first lifted her broken body from the boardwalk in Cottonwood Springs. We'll figure this out, Beau said softly. Together. The word hung between them, full of promise and possibility. Together, Kate repeated, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt a flicker of hope. They spent the day at the line shack, resting and planning. Beau had brought supplies: fresh bread, cheese, jerky, even coffee, and Kate cooked a proper meal over the fireplace. As they ate, Beau told her more about his confrontation with Thornton. He claims you stole a gold locket, a family heirloom his mother left him. Beau's skepticism was evident in his tone. Says he showed it to you at the saloon and you took it when he wasn't looking. Kate set down her coffee cup with a thud. That's ridiculous. He never showed me any locket. The only thing he offered me was money in exchange for. She faltered, color rising in her cheeks. You don't have to say it, Beau said quietly. When I refused, he grabbed me. Kate's hand went unconsciously to her throat, where fading bruises marked Thornton's fingerprints. Said no one refused Silas Thornton, that I'd learn my place. Beau's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice even. Did anyone else see what happened, hear what was said? Kate thought back to that night. The saloon had been closed, the last customer gone. She'd been cleaning up alone while the owner, Mr. Fleming, counted the day's earnings in his back office. Mr. Fleming might have heard something, but he's afraid of Thornton like everyone else, and even if he did speak up, it would be my word against Thornton's. Beau was silent for a moment, considering. Unless Thornton's lying about the locket itself, if it doesn't exist, if he can't produce it, that undermines his whole story. But how would we prove that? Kate asked. I'm not sure yet. Beau stood and moved to the window, looking out at the sun-dappled clearing. But every man has weak points, even Silas Thornton. They spent the afternoon exploring the area around the line shack, Beau pointing out tracks of deer and elk, showing Kate which plants were edible, which poisonous. Despite the circumstances that had brought them there, Kate found herself enjoying the wild beauty of the place in Beau's quiet company. As the day waned, they sat on a fallen log overlooking a small valley, watching as shadows lengthened across the land. Beau had brought his whittling knife and was working on a new piece of wood, his hands moving with practiced precision. "What are you making?" Kate asked, watching as shavings fell to the ground around his boots, not sure yet. Beau turned the wood in his hands. "Sometimes the wood tells you what it wants to be," Kate smiled. "My father was a bookbinder. He used to say the same thing about leather, that each piece had its own story waiting to be discovered." "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was." Kate's smile turned wistful. "He taught me to read when I was barely walking, said books were the surest way to live 1,000 lives in one lifetime." Beau glanced at her curiously. "Is that why you came west, looking for a new life?" "Partly." Kate picked up a pine cone, running her fingers over its rough surface. "After my parents died, I realized how fragile life is, how quickly everything you think is permanent can vanish." She looked up at the vast sky, painted now in shades of orange and purple as the sun began its descent. "I wanted to see something bigger than Boston's brick walls. To feel small against something grand like these mountains." Beau nodded, understanding in his eyes. "First time I saw the Tetons up in Wyoming, I felt that way, like I was standing at the edge of something ancient and powerful, something that would still be there long after I was gone." "Exactly." Kate was struck again by how easily he seemed to grasp her thoughts, even the ones she struggled to articulate. "Does that sound foolish?" "Not at all." Beau's voice was soft. "Sounds like you've got a poet's heart, Katherine O'Malley." The way he said her name made something flutter inside her chest, something that had nothing to do with her healing ribs. Kate looked away, suddenly self-conscious under his steady gaze. "We should head back to the cabin soon," Beau said, misreading her discomfort. "It'll be dark before long." "The cabin," Kate's head snapped up. "Is that safe? What if Thornton returns?" "He won't. Not tonight, at least." Beau stood, tucking his carving and knife into his pocket. "His men were riding east when I left town. Word is they're searching for you in the other direction." "And you're sure of this information?" Beau's mouth curved in a half-smile. "I have friends in town who keep their eyes open and their mouths shut. The cabin's safer than this shack, especially at night, better constructed, easier to defend if necessary." Kate wasn't entirely convinced, but she trusted Beau's judgment. As they rode back through the gathering dusk, she on Samson and Beau on his gray mare, Kate found herself watching the straight line of his back, the easy way he moved with his horse as if they were one being. There was a quiet confidence to him that she found increasingly compelling. The cabin was just as they'd left it, though Kate noticed the fresh bullet hole in the door with a shudder. Inside, Beau lit the lamps and built up the fire while Kate prepared a simple supper from the remaining supplies. They ate at the small table, the routine already feeling strangely familiar, as if they'd been sharing meals for years rather than days. After supper, Beau spread a map across the table. "We need to think beyond tomorrow," he said, tracing routes with his finger. "Thornton won't give up easily, and I can't keep you hidden here forever." "What about proving his story false?" Kate asked. "About the locket," Beau frowned. "It would be your word against his unless we can find evidence, and Thornton's not likely to leave that kind of proof lying around." "Perhaps someone else knows the truth." Kate leaned forward, studying the map. "Thornton must have servants, ranch hands who might have heard something. He keeps his household tight." Beau shook his head. "Mostly Mexican workers who don't speak much English and are loyal to him because he pays better than most." Kate sighed in frustration. "There must be something we can do." Beau was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the map but his thoughts clearly elsewhere. "There might be another way," he said finally, "something that would force Thornton to back down without involving the law." "What do you mean?" "Thornton cares about two things: money and reputation." Beau looked up at her. "If we could threaten one or both." Kate frowned. "I don't understand." "I have a friend at the Territorial Enterprise in Virginia City. He's a newspaperman, always looking for a good story." Beau's eyes took on a calculating gleam. "What if we threatened to make Thornton's behavior public, not just here but throughout the territory? Would that work?" Kate was skeptical. Men mistreating women hardly makes for shocking news out here. True, but Thornton fancies himself a gentleman. He's been trying to cultivate business relationships in San Francisco, maybe even political ambitions. A public scandal might damage those prospects. Kate considered this. It's risky. If we threaten him and fail, he'll only come after us more aggressively. Us? Beau raised an eyebrow. Yes, us. Kate met his gaze steadily. You're involved now, whether you like it or not. A slow smile spread across Beau's face. I never said I didn't like it. Something in his tone made Kate's cheeks warm, and she looked away, suddenly intensely aware of the intimacy of their situation alone in his cabin, planning together like partners, like. It's getting late, Beau said, rolling up the map. You should take the bed again. I'll sleep by the fire. You've been sleeping on the floor for days, Kate protested. It's your bed, your home. I can't keep imposing. It's not an imposition. Beau's voice was firm. I've slept in far worse places than my own floor, believe me. Kate wanted to argue further, but exhaustion was creeping over her. The day's ride, the constant vigilance, the emotional strain of their situation, it all suddenly felt overwhelming. She nodded and retreated to the bed, pulling the quilt around her shoulders as Beau banked the fire for the night. In the dim light, she watched as he settled on a bedroll near the hearth, his profile sharp against the fading glow of the embers. There was something deeply comforting about his presence, this man who had risked everything to protect a woman he barely knew, who continued to put her safety above his own. Beau, she said softly. He turned his head toward her. Thank you, not just for today, but for everything. In the shadows, she couldn't see his expression clearly, but his voice was warm when he replied, Get some rest, Katherine. Tomorrow's a new day. As she drifted toward sleep, Kate found herself thinking that, for the first time in a very long while, she was actually looking forward to tomorrow. The next morning dawned clear and bright. Kate awoke to the smell of coffee and bacon, and the sound of Beau moving quietly around the cabin. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine this was normal, waking up in this snug cabin with this good man nearby. The day stretching ahead with simple tasks and shared meals. Such domestic dreams were dangerous, she reminded herself as she rose and smoothed her wrinkled dress. Her situation was still precarious, and Beau's kindness didn't mean he saw her as anything more than a responsibility. Morning, Beau greeted her, setting a plate of bacon and eggs on the table. Hope you're hungry. Starving, actually. Kate joined him at the table, suddenly conscious of her disheveled appearance. She'd been wearing the same clothes for days, washing them as best she could in the evenings. I must look a fright. Beau glanced up, his eyes moving over her face in a way that made her heart skip. You look fine to me. Kate ducked her head, focusing on her breakfast. What's the plan for today? I need to ride into town, Beau said, pouring coffee for both of them. Get supplies, check with my friends for news about Thornton's movements. Kate tensed. Is it safe for you to go? What if Thornton's men see you? They won't bother me in broad daylight, not in the middle of town. Beau's confidence was reassuring. And I need to send a telegram to my friend at the newspaper. About threatening Thornton, Beau nodded. Just feeling out the possibility, see if he'd be willing to run such a story if needed. I should come with you, Kate said impulsively. I'm tired of hiding, and I could speak to Mrs. Holloway about returning to work. It's too dangerous, Beau said immediately. Thornton's still looking for you. All the more reason to show myself publicly. Hiding makes me look guilty. Beau frowned. Katherine, he had his hands around your throat. He threw you through a window. What makes you think he won't finish what he started if he finds you alone? I won't be alone. I'll be with you. Kate set down her cup, determined now. Besides, I can't stay hidden in your cabin forever. People are already talking, I'm sure. Let them talk. Beau's voice was harder than she'd ever heard it. Better gossip than you getting hurt again or worse. Kate reached across the table and laid her hand on his arm. Beau, I understand your concern, but this is my life, my choice. I came west to be free, not to live in fear. Beau looked at her hand on his arm, then up at her face. Something in his expression softened. You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met, you know that, Kate smiled. So you've mentioned. Beau sighed in resignation. Fine, but we do this my way. You stay at my side the entire time. We go straight to the telegraph office, then to Mrs. Holloway's, then back here. No detours, no lingering. Agreed, Kate said, squeezing his arm before withdrawing her hand. And thank you for understanding. Beau shook his head, but there was a reluctant smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Don't thank me yet. This could still be a terrible idea. An hour later, they were riding into Cottonwood Springs, Kate wearing one of Beau's spare shirts over her dress for warmth. The main street was busy with the usual morning traffic, wagons delivering goods, women shopping, cowboys lounging outside the saloon despite the early hour. Kate felt exposed, like every eye in town was on her, though in reality, few people paid them much attention. She stayed close to Beau as they dismounted in front of the telegraph office, his solid presence beside her a comfort against the crawling anxiety that threatened to overwhelm her. Inside, Beau wrote out his message while Kate waited nervously by the door, scanning the street for any sign of Thornton or his men. When Beau finished, he guided her back outside with a hand at the small of her back, a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. Mrs. Holloway's shop next, he said, helping her mount Samson again. Then we head back. The millinery shop was just opening when they arrived. Mrs. Holloway, a plump, grandmotherly woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner, looked up as they entered, her face breaking into a relieved smile at the sight of Kate. There you are, child. I've been worried sick. She came around the counter to take Kate's hands in her own. Are you all right? Really all right? I'm fine, Mrs. Holloway, Kate assured her, touched by the older woman's genuine concern. Thanks to Mr. Blackburn. Mrs. Holloway turned her appraising gaze on Beau, who shifted uncomfortably under her scrutiny. Yes, I've heard about your gallant rescue, she said. The whole town's talking about it. I just did what anyone would do, madam, Beau said, tipping his hat respectfully. Nonsense, Mrs. Holloway snorted. Half the men in this town would have walked right by and the other half would have joined in. Present company accepted, of course, she added with a nod to Beau. Kate felt a surge of affection for her employer. Mrs. Holloway had always been fair and kind to her, treating her more like a daughter than an employee. I came to ask if I still have a position here, Kate said. I understand if you've had to replace me. Replace you? With whom? Mrs. Holloway waved a dismissive hand. No one in this town has your skill with a needle or your eye for color. Your job is waiting whenever you're ready to return. Relief washed over Kate. Thank you. I'm not sure when that will be, but knowing the position is still mine means a great deal. Mrs. Holloway's expression turned serious. You should know, Silas Thornton came by yesterday asking questions about you, claimed you'd stolen something valuable from him. Kate's heart sank. And did you believe him? I've known Silas since he was in short pants, Mrs. Holloway said tartly. He was a bully then, and he's a bully now, just with more money and fewer people willing to tell him no. Of course I didn't believe him. Kate felt a rush of gratitude toward the older woman. Thank you for your faith in me. Faith has nothing to do with it. I know your character. Mrs. Holloway looked between Kate and Beau, her eyes shrewd. What will you do now? Thornton's not a man who gives up easily. We're working on a solution, Beau said, glancing out the window at the street. But for now, it's safer if Katherine stays out of town. Mrs. Holloway nodded, accepting this without further question. You need anything at all, you send word to me, you hear? Yes, madam, Kate said, embracing the older woman briefly. Thank you. They were just about to leave when the shop door opened, setting the small bell above it jingling. Kate turned, expecting another customer, and felt her blood freeze in her veins. Silas Thornton stood in the doorway, impeccably dressed as always in a black frock coat and silk waistcoat. His pale eyes moved from Kate to Beau, a smile spreading across his face that never reached those cold depths. Well, well, he said, his voice silky with triumph. If it isn't the thief and her protector, how convenient to find you both together. Beau moved instinctively, putting himself between Kate and Thornton. We have no business with you, Thornton. On the contrary. Thornton stepped further into the shop, forcing Mrs. Holloway to back away. Miss O'Malley and I have unfinished business. She has something that belongs to me. I took nothing from you, Kate said, her voice steadier than she felt. You know that. Thornton's smile widened. Do I? Then how do you explain this? He reached into his coat pocket and withdrew a small object that glinted gold in the morning light, a locket on a delicate chain. Kate stared at it in confusion. I've never seen that before in my life. No, Thornton raised an eyebrow. Then why was it found among your belongings at the boarding house? Mrs. Peterson was most helpful in allowing the sheriff to search your room. Kate felt as if the floor were tilting beneath her. That's impossible. You're lying. Am I? Thornton turned to address Mrs. Holloway. Sheriff Davis has the locket now as evidence. Perhaps you'd like to accompany us to his office to clear up this misunderstanding, Mrs. Holloway straightened her spine. I know Katherine didn't steal anything from you, Silas. You're not fooling anyone with this charade. A charming display of loyalty, Thornton said, his voice hardening. But the evidence speaks for itself. Sheriff Davis is preparing an arrest warrant as we speak. Beau's hand went to his gun belt. You're not taking her anywhere. Thornton's eyes glittered dangerously. Are you threatening an unarmed man, Mr. Blackburn? That hardly seems sporting. The tension in the small shop was palpable. Kate could see Beau calculating their options, his jaw tight with restraint. Outside on the street, she noticed two of Thornton's men lingering near their horses, watching the shop entrance. This won't end well for you, Thornton, Beau said quietly. Whatever game you're playing, it's not worth the trouble it'll bring you. Game? Thornton's voice dripped with mock offense. I'm merely a citizen seeking justice for a theft. Miss O'Malley took something precious from my family and I want it returned. The only thing I took from you was the right to use me as you pleased, Kate said, anger overcoming her fear. And I'd do it again. Something ugly flashed in Thornton's eyes. You'll regret that kind of talk when you're sitting in a jail cell, my dear. That's enough. Beau's voice was like the crack of a whip. You've said your piece, Thornton, now leave. Thornton studied Beau for a long moment, then inclined his head slightly. As you wish, but this isn't over. Sheriff Davis will be looking for both of you. He turned to go, then paused in the doorway. Oh, and Mr. Blackburn, harboring a fugitive is a serious offense. I'd hate to see you lose that little patch of land you're so proud of. With that parting shot, he stepped back onto the street, rejoining his men. Through the window, Kate could see him gesturing animatedly as they mounted their horses and rode away. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Mrs. Holloway broke the silence with an unladylike curse that would have shocked Kate under different circumstances. That snake, the older woman spat. Planting evidence in your room, getting that spineless Davis involved. It's low, even for Silas. Kate felt numb with the implications of what had just happened. He's framing me, and now he's threatening Beau's ranch too. Beau's expression was grim. We need to move quickly. If Davis really is preparing an arrest warrant, he is, Mrs. Holloway confirmed. Silas wouldn't bluff about something so easily disproven. Then we need to leave town, now. Beau took Kate's arm. Thank you for your support, Mrs. Holloway, but the less you know about our plans from here, the better. Mrs. Holloway nodded in understanding. Be careful, both of you. Silas Thornton is a dangerous man when crossed. We're beginning to understand just how dangerous, Kate said, hugging her employer one more time before allowing Beau to guide her from the shop. They moved swiftly to their horses, Beau scanning the street constantly for any sign of the sheriff or Thornton's men. As they mounted, Kate saw Mr. Fleming, the saloon owner, watching them from his doorway. He raised a hand in what might have been a warning or perhaps just a greeting before disappearing back inside. We'll take the back roads, Beau said as they rode out of town at a controlled pace, trying not to attract attention. Once we're clear of town, we'll head for the high country, not back to your cabin, Kate asked, surprised. Too obvious, it's the first place they'll look. Beau's expression was focused, determined. I know places in these mountains where we can disappear for a while. Give us time to think. What about your ranch, your cattle? They'll be fine for a few days. My neighbor checks on them when I'm away. Beau glanced at her, his eyes softening slightly. Don't worry about that now. Focus on staying safe. As they left Cottonwood Springs behind, climbing into the pine-covered foothills, Kate was struck by the realization that Beau was now risking everything for her, his freedom, his reputation, potentially even his land. The weight of that sacrifice settled heavily on her shoulders. I'm sorry, she said as they paused to water the horses at a small creek. This is all my fault. If I hadn't insisted on going to town, stop. Beau's voice was gentle but firm. "None of this is your fault. Thornton is the villain here, not you, but your ranch is just land and buildings." Beau dismounted, coming to help her down from Samson. His hands lingered at her waist longer than necessary, his eyes holding hers. "Some things are more important." The way he looked at her made Kate's breath catch. There was something in his gaze, a warmth, an intensity that went beyond mere concern or duty. Before she could make sense of it, he stepped back, returning to his practical, capable self. "We should keep moving. There's a place about 3 hours' ride from here where we can rest." They rode through the day, climbing steadily higher into the mountains. Beau led them on game trails and old Indian paths, clearly familiar with the terrain. By late afternoon, they reached a small plateau overlooking a vast expanse of wilderness. A crude shelter stood near the edge of the cliff, little more than a lean-to with stone walls on 3 sides and an overhanging roof of pine boughs. "My hunting camp," Beau explained as they dismounted. "Not much, but it's sheltered and hard to find unless you know where to look." Kate surveyed their surroundings, the breathtaking vista of mountains and valleys, the clean, thin air, the absolute silence broken only by the whisper of wind through the pines. "It's beautiful." Beau nodded, already busy unsaddling the horses and setting up camp. "My grandfather showed me this place when I was a boy, said it was where he came to think when the world got too complicated." "And does it help with the thinking?" Beau paused, looking out over the vista. "Sometimes, it reminds you how small your problems really are against all this." He gestured to the vast landscape before them. They worked together to make the camp comfortable, gathering wood for a small fire, laying out bedrolls inside the shelter. Kate was grateful for the activity, for the chance to feel useful rather than helpless. As the sun began to sink toward the western peaks, Beau prepared a simple meal from the supplies they'd brought. "What's our next move?" Kate asked as they sat before the fire, watching darkness creep across the valley below. "We can't hide up here forever." Beau poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling into the darkening sky. "No, we can't," he looked thoughtful. "The way I see it, we have 3 options. 1, we could try to clear your name, find evidence that Thornton planted the locket, maybe get someone to testify that they saw him do it." "That seems unlikely," Kate said. "He's too clever for that." 2, Beau continued, "we could follow through on our original plan. Contact the newspaper, threaten to expose Thornton's behavior. But that would require us to come out of hiding, and now there's an arrest warrant." "Exactly." Beau met her eyes across the flames. "Which leaves option 3, we leave, start fresh somewhere else." Kate stared at him. "We?" Beau looked away, suddenly interested in the fire again. "I mean, if that's what you want. You said yourself you came west for a new start. Maybe it's time for another one. What about your ranch? Everything you've worked for, land is just land." Beau shrugged, though Kate could tell the casualness was forced. "There's plenty more of it out there." The implication of what he was suggesting hung in the air between them. Not just offering to help her escape, but to come with her, to leave behind everything he'd built for a fresh start together. "Why would you do that?" Kate asked softly. "You barely know me." Beau was quiet for so long that Kate thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost reverent. "I know enough. I know you're brave and stubborn and kind. I know you face the world head-on even when it tries to break you." He looked up at her, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. "And I know that these past few days with you have felt more right than anything has in a long time." Kate's heart hammered in her chest. "Beau, you don't have to say anything," he said quickly. "I'm not expecting. I just want you to know you have options, that's all." But Kate didn't want options. She wanted certainty, safety, belonging, all the things she'd been searching for since she left Boston. And somehow, improbably, in the midst of danger and chaos, she'd found those things with this quiet, honorable man. She rose from her place by the fire and moved to sit beside him. Tentatively, she reached for his hand, twining her fingers with his. His skin was rough with calluses, warm against hers. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "for everything. For seeing me as someone worth protecting, worth caring for." Beau's hand tightened around hers. "Katherine," The way he said her name like a prayer, like something precious, undid the last of her hesitation. Kate leaned forward, closing the space between them, and pressed her lips to his. For a moment, Beau remained perfectly still, as if afraid any movement might shatter the moment. Then his free hand came up to cradle her face, and he was kissing her back with a gentleness that made her heart ache. When they finally parted, Beau rested his forehead against hers, his breathing unsteady. "I've been wanting to do that since I first saw you looking up at me from that boardwalk," he admitted. "Even with your face all bruised up, you were the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen." Kate laughed softly. "I doubt that very much. It's true." Beau's thumb traced the curve of her cheek. "You had this look in your eyes like you'd been knocked down but weren't beaten, like you were already planning how to get back up and fight." "I was mostly planning how to stop the world from spinning," Kate confessed. "But I remember thinking you looked like something out of a dime novel, the hero riding in just when all seemed lost." Beau chuckled. "Hardly a hero, just a man who couldn't stand by and watch someone get hurt." "That's what makes you a hero," Kate said softly. "Not charging in on a white horse with guns blazing, but simply doing the right thing when it would have been easier to walk away." They stayed like that for a long moment, close and quiet, the fire crackling beside them and the vast night sky wheeling overhead. For the first time since Thornton had attacked her, Kate felt completely safe, completely at peace. "We should get some rest," Beau said eventually, though he made no move to pull away. "Tomorrow we need to decide what we're going to do." Kate nodded, but neither of them moved. Instead, Beau leaned in to kiss her again, slower this time, deeper, as if sealing a promise between them. Whatever came next, Kate knew with sudden certainty they would face it together. They slept side by side that night, wrapped in separate blankets but close enough to feel each other's warmth. Just before dawn, Kate was awakened by a sound that didn't belong in their peaceful sanctuary, the distant but unmistakable noise of men's voices carried on the wind. She sat up, instantly alert. Beside her, Beau was already awake, his finger to his lips in a gesture for silence. He moved to the edge of the plateau, crouching low, and peered into the gray half-light of early morning. "Riders," he whispered when he returned to her side. "5, maybe 6 of them, following the same trail we used yesterday." Kate's heart sank. "Thornton." "Can't tell from this distance, but it seems likely." Beau was already rolling up their bedding, moving with swift efficiency. "We need to move, now." "How did they find us so quickly?" Kate asked, helping to break camp. "Someone must have seen which direction we headed, or—" Beau paused, his expression hardening. "Or they're following our tracks. Thornton might have hired a tracker." The implications were clear. They couldn't outrun someone skilled enough to follow their trail through the wilderness. They needed a new strategy. "What do we do?" Kate asked, fighting to keep the fear from her voice. Beau thought for a moment, then seemed to come to a decision. "There's an old mining settlement about 10 miles north of here. Silver Creek. It's mostly abandoned now, but there might be a few old-timers still working claims. If we can get there, we might find help, or at least a place to hide until we can figure out our next move." They worked quickly, erasing all signs of their camp before mounting their horses. Instead of following the main trail, Beau led them on a precarious path down the backside of the plateau, a route so steep that Kate had to close her eyes at times, trusting Samson's sure-footedness more than her own nerve. By mid-morning, they had descended into a narrow canyon, a swift-running creek at its bottom. Beau directed them into the water, guiding the horses upstream for nearly a mile before finally emerging onto a rocky bank that would leave no tracks. "That should buy us some time," he said as they paused to rest the horses. "But we need to keep moving. Silver Creek is still several hours away." Kate nodded, too focused on their situation to speak. The reality of their predicament was beginning to settle on her. They were fugitives now, running not just from Thornton's personal vendetta, but from the law itself. If they were caught, Beau could face jail time for harboring her, maybe worse if Thornton's influence was as extensive as it seemed. They rode hard through the day, stopping only when necessary to rest the horses. Beau remained vigilant, frequently checking behind them for signs of pursuit. By late afternoon, as the sun was beginning its descent toward the western horizon, the landscape began to change. The dense pine forest gave way to more open terrain, with rocky outcroppings and stunted juniper trees. "There," Beau said, pointing ahead to where a thin column of smoke rose against the darkening sky. "Silver Creek." The settlement, when they reached it, was little more than a handful of weathered cabins clustered along a rocky streambed. Most appeared abandoned, their windows dark, their roofs partially collapsed from years of harsh mountain winters. But from one cabin at the far end, light flickered, and the smoke they'd seen curled from its stone chimney. As they approached, the cabin's door opened and an old man stepped out, a shotgun cradled in his arms. His beard was white and wild, his face weathered as the surrounding rocks, but his eyes were sharp beneath bushy brows. "That's far enough," he called, raising the shotgun to his shoulder. "State your business." Beau reined in his horse, raising one hand to show he meant no harm. "We're looking for a place to rest for the night, maybe some food if you can spare it. We can pay." The old man squinted at them suspiciously. "Ain't a hotel, mister, and I ain't taking in strangers, especially not a man and woman traveling alone without being hitched." "Please," Kate said, urging Samson forward slightly. "We're in trouble. There are men following us who mean us harm." Something in her voice or expression must have reached the old man because his stance softened slightly. "What kind of trouble? You running from the law?" Beau and Kate exchanged glances. "It's complicated," Beau said. "But yes, there's a warrant out for the lady's arrest. She's been falsely accused." "They all say that," the old man grumbled, but he lowered his shotgun. "Who's after you?" "Silas Thornton," Kate said. "Do you know him?" The old man spat on the ground. "Know him? That snake tried to buy my claim for pennies 3 years ago. When I refused, his men accidentally caused a cave and that nearly killed me and ruined my best tunnel." He gestured to his right leg, which Kate now noticed was twisted at an unnatural angle. "Left me with this as a souvenir." "Then you understand why we need to avoid him," Beau said. The old man considered them for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. "Name's Ezekiel Burke. Most folks call me Zeke. You can stable your horses in the lean-to out back. Got stew on the stove if you're hungry." "Thank you, Mr. Burke," Kate said, relief washing over her. "We're grateful for your kindness." "Don't thank me yet," Zeke warned as they dismounted. "If Thornton's really on your trail, he'll find this place sure enough. I'm just giving you a few hours respite, not sanctuary." Inside, Zeke's cabin was surprisingly cozy. Though small, it was neat and well-maintained, with a sturdy table, 2 chairs, and a narrow bed in one corner. A bookshelf held a surprising number of volumes, their spines worn with use. The walls were decorated with detailed sketches of mining operations and geological formations. "You an engineer, Mr. Burke?" Kate asked, noting the technical precision of the drawings. "Was once upon a time," Zeke said, ladling stew into bowls for them. "Studied at Columbia before the war. Came west after, like a lot of men, looking for a fresh start. Found silver instead," Beau guessed, accepting a bowl with thanks. "Some," Zeke acknowledged. "Not the mother lode I'd hoped for, but enough to keep me going, or it was until Thornton's men collapsed my main shaft." He settled into a chair with a grimace, his bad legs stretched out before him. "Now, suppose you tell me what you did to get on Thornton's bad side." Between bites of the surprisingly good stew, Kate and Beau related their story from Thornton's initial advances to his violent assault, Beau's intervention, and finally the false accusation of theft that had led to the arrest warrant. Zeke listened without interruption, his weathered face impassive. When they finished, he nodded slowly. "Sounds like Thornton, all right. Man never could stand being refused anything." "The problem is," Beau said, "as long as he's got the sheriff in his pocket and that planted locket as evidence, Katherine's in danger. And now I'm wanted too for helping her evade arrest." "You need leverage," Zeke said, stroking his beard thoughtfully. "Something Thornton wants more than he wants revenge." "Like what?" Kate asked. Zeke's eyes took on a calculating gleam. "I might have an idea, but it's risky and you'll have to trust me." Before he could elaborate, the sound of distant hoofbeats reached them. Beau was on his feet instantly, moving to the window to peer through a gap in the curtains. Riders coming up the trail, he reported grimly. 6 of them, Thornton's in the lead. Already, Kate felt panic rising in her throat. How did they find us so quickly? Doesn't matter now, Zeke said, rising with difficulty. Quick, there's a cellar under the floor, small, but it'll hide you both. He limped to a worn rug near the bed and pulled it aside to reveal a trapdoor. Get in, and no matter what you hear, stay quiet until I come for you. Beau hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave the old man to face Thornton alone. We can't ask you to risk yourself for us. You didn't ask, Zeke said gruffly. Now get down there before they see you through the window. The cellar was little more than a root storage space dug into the earth beneath the cabin, barely tall enough for Beau to stand upright. It smelled of dirt and potatoes, and the only light came from thin cracks between the floorboards overhead. As Zeke replaced the trapdoor and rug, plunging them into near total darkness, Beau pulled Kate close to him, his arms protective around her. Above them, they heard the muffled sound of horses arriving, men's voices, then Zeke's door opening. Thornton's voice, smooth as silk but cold as ice, carried clearly through the floorboards. Mr. Burke, it's been some time. Not long enough, came Zeke's reply. What brings you to my humble abode, Thornton? Come to finish the job your men started on my leg. Don't be dramatic, Burke. That was an unfortunate accident, nothing more. Boots scraped across the floor as multiple men entered the cabin. I'm looking for 2 fugitives, a young woman and a cowboy. They might have passed this way. Seen anyone matching that description? Ain't seen nobody in weeks, Zeke said flatly. In case you hadn't noticed, Silver Creek ain't exactly a popular destination these days. Search the place, Thornton ordered, and heavy footsteps moved around overhead in the darkness of the cellar. Kate pressed closer to Beau, burying her face against his chest to muffle her breathing. His heartbeat was steady against her cheek, his arms secure around her, but she could feel the tension in his body as they waited to be discovered. Nothing here, boss, a gruff voice reported after several minutes. Just the old man's things. The horses, then, Thornton said, sounding irritated. Check his stable. More footsteps, the sound of the cabin door opening and closing. Kate held her breath, knowing their horses were hidden in Zeke's lean-to. Discovery seemed inevitable now, Mr. Burke, Thornton's voice again, silky with menace. I know you have no love for me. The feeling is mutual, I assure you, but harboring fugitives is a serious offense. If I find you've been lying to me. You'll what? Zeke's voice was defiant. Kill me, burn down my cabin, go ahead. I've lived a full life and I don't fear death. But I'm telling you the truth, I haven't seen your fugitives. A tense silence followed, broken by the return of Thornton's men. 2 horses in the lean-to, boss, one reported. Saddles and gear too, Kate's heart sank. Beside her, she felt Beau shift slightly, his hand moving toward the gun at his hip. Well, well, Thornton's voice was triumphant. It seems you've been less than honest with me, Burke. Those are my horses, Zeke said calmly. The bay's been with me for years. The other I bought last month in Cottonwood Springs. Is that so? Skepticism dripped from Thornton's words. Then you won't mind if my men have a closer look at them. I'm told the fugitives we're pursuing were riding a buckskin gelding and a gray mare, distinctive animals. Be my guest, Zeke said, but you're wasting your time. More footsteps, the door opening and closing again. Kate could feel sweat beading on her forehead despite the cellar's coolness. How could Zeke explain away their horses? It seemed only moments before they would be discovered. Boss, a voice called from outside, clear even through the floorboards. These ain't the horses we're looking for. One's an old bay mare, the other's a dun-colored gelding, different markings entirely. Kate's eyes widened in the darkness, though she could barely make out Beau's face. How was this possible? Had Zeke somehow disguised their horses, or were Thornton's men lying for some reason? Check again, Thornton ordered, his voice sharp with frustration. They must be the right horses. We did check, boss, twice, different horses entirely. More silence, then Thornton's voice again, tight with controlled anger. Mr. Burke, if I discover you've somehow tricked us. You're welcome to stay and search as long as you like, Zeke replied, a hint of satisfaction in his tone. But night's coming on, and those fugitives of yours are getting farther away with every minute you waste here. A long pause followed, then the sound of Thornton moving toward the door. This isn't over, Burke. It never is with you, Thornton, Zeke replied wearily. The door closed with a bang, and hoofbeats gradually faded into the distance. Still, Kate and Beau remained frozen in their hiding place, afraid to move or speak until they were certain Thornton and his men were truly gone. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the trapdoor creaked open and light spilled into the cellar. Zeke's weathered face appeared in the opening. "They're gone," he announced. "For now, at least." Beau helped Kate up through the trapdoor, both of them stiff from their time in the cramped space. "How did you do it?" he asked Zeke. "Those were definitely our horses in your lean-to." A slow smile spread across Zeke's face, the first they'd seen. "Amazing what a little mud can do to change a horse's appearance. Slathered your buckskin with enough to turn him dun-colored, rubbed soot into your gray to darken her coat. Won't fool anyone in daylight who knows horses, but in the dim light of that lean-to, it was enough to confuse Thornton's men." "That was quick thinking," Kate said admiringly. "You risked a lot for us. Why?" Zeke's smile faded. "Told you before Thornton ruined my leg, my livelihood. Man like that needs to be taught he can't just take whatever he wants." He gestured for them to sit. "Which brings me back to what I was saying before we were interrupted. You need leverage." "What kind of leverage could we possibly have against a man like Thornton?" Kate asked, settling back at the table. Zeke reached for a book on his shelf and withdrew a folded document from between its pages. "This," he said, spreading it on the table. It was a map, detailed and clearly drawn by a skilled hand. "Thornton's been trying to buy up all the land around Silver Creek for years. Most folks thought he was crazy, the silver played out long ago, but I was an engineer, remember. I know these mountains." Beau leaned forward, studying the map. "You found something." "Better than silver," Zeke confirmed, tapping a spot marked with an X. "Copper, a massive deposit, potentially worth a fortune with the demand for electrical wiring growing back east." Kate looked between the two men, understanding dawning. "And this deposit is on your land, partly," Zeke said. "It extends under 3 adjacent claims, mine and 2 others that were abandoned years ago. I bought those claims when their owners gave up and went home. On paper, they still belong to those men, but I hold the deeds." He looked at Beau significantly. "Thornton doesn't know that. He thinks they're still owned by men who might be persuaded to sell cheap." "So you're suggesting we use this information as leverage," Beau said slowly. "Threaten to expose the copper deposit unless Thornton drops his vendetta against Katherine." "Not quite," Zeke tapped the map again. "I'm suggesting we give Thornton exactly what he wants, a chance to buy those claims, for a reasonable price, of course, and with certain conditions." "Such as dropping the theft charges against me," Kate said, beginning to understand, "and publicly admitting they were false," Zeke added. "Plus compensation for your injuries and a guarantee that he'll leave you both alone from now on." Beau looked skeptical. "Why would Thornton agree to that?" "He could just take the information about the copper and still come after us." "Because I won't tell him exactly where the copper is until after he's fulfilled his end of the bargain," Zeke explained. "And because I've prepared documents to be sent to newspapers in San Francisco and Denver exposing the whole sordid affair if anything happens to any of us." Kate was impressed by the old man's thoroughness. "You've thought this through." "Had 3 years to think about how to get back at Thornton for what he did to me," Zeke said grimly. "Just been waiting for the right opportunity." Beau and Kate exchanged glances. It was a bold plan with significant risks, but it offered a chance to end their nightmare and return to normal life or some version of it. "How would we even approach Thornton with this offer?" Beau asked. "He's not likely to sit down for a friendly negotiation after chasing us across the territory." "Leave that to me," Zeke said. "I know a lawyer in Cottonwood Springs who hates Thornton almost as much as I do. He can act as intermediary." He looked between them. "But you'll need to stay hidden until the deal is done. I've got a friend with a cabin about 20 miles from here. He's panning for gold up near the Colorado border, won't be back for months. You can lie low there while I set things in motion." The plan was set into motion the following morning. Zeke provided them with directions to his friend's cabin, fresh supplies, and his solemn promise to contact them as soon as he had news. with their horses restored to their normal appearances, though still bearing traces of mud. Beau and Kate set out at first light, following a little-used trail deeper into the mountains. The journey took most of the day, the trail growing increasingly faint as they climbed higher into remote terrain. By late afternoon, they reached a small clearing where a sturdy log cabin stood beside a rushing mountain stream. It was similar to Beau's own place, though smaller and more roughly constructed, a true prospector's cabin built for function rather than comfort. "Home, sweet home," Beau said as they dismounted. "At least for a while." The cabin was basic but clean, with a stone fireplace, a rough plank table with 2 chairs, and a narrow bed against one wall. A shelf held basic supplies: coffee, flour, beans, salt left by Zeke's friend for his eventual return. Beau built a fire while Kate explored their temporary refuge, trying to imagine the weeks ahead. "How long do you think this will take?" she asked as they shared a simple meal that evening. "Zeke's plan, I mean." Beau considered this. "Hard to say. A few weeks at least, I'd guess. Lawyers move slowly, and Thornton will need time to verify the copper deposit is real." Kate nodded, staring into the fire. "And if it works, if Thornton drops the charges?" "Then we go back to our lives," Beau said, though something in his voice suggested he wasn't entirely pleased with this prospect. "Our separate lives, you mean," Kate clarified, watching his face carefully. Beau met her eyes across the flames. "Is that what you want? To go back to the millinery shop, to your room at the boarding house, as if nothing happened between us?" Kate's heart quickened at the directness of his question. "No," she admitted softly, "that's not what I want." "What do you want, Katherine?" Beau asked, his voice low and intense. Kate took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I want what I've always wanted, a life that's my own, where I'm not afraid or controlled by others. But now I want something else too." She met his gaze steadily. "I want you to be part of that life." The smile that spread across Beau's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. He rose and came around the fire to kneel before her, taking her hands in his. "I was hoping you'd say that," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "because I can't imagine my life without you now. These past days, despite everything, the danger, the running, they've been the best of my life because you've been in them." Kate felt tears spring to her eyes. "Even with Thornton trying to kill us," Beau laughed softly, "even then." His expression grew serious again. "I know it's fast, we've only known each other a short time, but out here, life doesn't always give you the luxury of moving slowly. When you find something real, something true, you hold on to it with both hands." "And is that what this is?" Kate asked. "Something real?" "The most real thing I've ever known," Beau said simply. He leaned forward then, and Kate met him halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that felt like a promise, like the beginning of something extraordinary. When they finally parted, Beau rested his forehead against hers, his breath warm on her face. "When this is all over," he said softly, "when we're free of Thornton and his lies, will you marry me, Katherine O'Malley?" Joy burst in Kate's chest like wildflowers blooming after spring rain. "Yes," she whispered against his lips. "Yes, I will." The days that followed took on a dreamlike quality. Isolated from the world in their mountain sanctuary, Beau and Kate fell into a simple rhythm of daily tasks and shared moments. They fished in the stream, gathered wild berries and herbs, took long walks exploring the surrounding wilderness. In the evenings, they sat before the fire, talking for hours about their pasts, their hopes, their dreams for the future. Beau spoke of his vision for his ranch, not just cattle, but horses too, breeding stock to sell to the army and to settlers pushing west. Kate shared her own ambitions to open a shop of her own someday, not just hats but dresses too, fashions that combined Eastern refinement with Western practicality. "We could do both," Beau suggested one evening as they lay side by side on a blanket beneath the stars. "Run the ranch and have your shop in town. Build a bigger house on my land with a proper sewing room for you." Kate turned her head to look at him, his profile sharp against the night sky. "You do that, make space in your life for my dreams too." Beau's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "Your dreams are my dreams now. That's what partnership means." The word partnership resonated with Kate more than any flowery declaration of love could have. It spoke of equality, of mutual respect, of building something together. It was everything she'd ever wanted from a relationship. As the days passed, their physical relationship deepened as well, though they maintained certain boundaries, both agreeing that some things were worth waiting for until they were properly wed. Still, there were long kisses by firelight, tender embraces under the stars, moments of intimacy that brought them closer with each passing day. 2 weeks into their mountain idyll, Beau returned from checking a fishing line to find a note pinned to the cabin door. It was from Zeke, written in his precise engineer's hand. Progress made, meeting arranged, return to my cabin tomorrow at noon. They set out at dawn the next day, both anxious and hopeful about what news might await them. The journey back to Silver Creek seemed shorter somehow, the familiar landscape welcoming them like old friends. When they arrived at Zeke's cabin, they found not just the old miner but a distinguished-looking man in a well-cut suit whom he introduced as James Harper, attorney at law. "Mr. Harper has been acting as our intermediary with Thornton," Zeke explained as they settled around his table. "He has news." "Good news, I hope," Harper said, adjusting his spectacles. "After some initial resistance, Mr. Thornton has agreed to consider our proposal. He's particularly interested in the copper deposits as we anticipated." "And the conditions?" Kate asked, hardly daring to hope. "That's where things get interesting," Harper replied. "Mr. Thornton is willing to withdraw the theft accusation against Miss O'Malley and acknowledge publicly that it was a mistake. However, he's resistant to making any admission that might suggest he assaulted you or behaved improperly." Kate felt a surge of indignation. Of course he is. "Heaven forbid his reputation should suffer for nearly killing me." "It's pride," Zeke said, shaking his head. "Man like Thornton, his reputation is everything. Admitting he attacked a woman would ruin him socially, even out here." "So what now?" Beau asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. "We just let him off the hook for what he did to Katherine." Harper held up a placating hand. "Not quite. I've drafted an agreement that I believe serves everyone's interests. Mr. Thornton will withdraw all charges against Miss O'Malley, make a public statement that the locket was misplaced, not stolen, and was subsequently found in his own home. He'll also pay compensation $500 for the misunderstanding." "And in exchange?" Kate asked. "In exchange, you agree not to pursue any legal action against him regarding the incident at the saloon. The story officially becomes that you fell through the window accidentally during an argument, and Mr. Blackburn misinterpreted the situation when he intervened." Kate laughed bitterly. "So he gets away with it completely?" "Not completely," Harper said, a glint in his eye. "The agreement doesn't prevent others from drawing their own conclusions about what really happened, and in a small town like Cottonwood Springs, people talk. The truth has a way of becoming known, even when it's not officially acknowledged." Beau leaned forward. "And what guarantee do we have that Thornton will honor this agreement once he gets what he wants?" "That's where my contribution comes in," Zeke said. "The copper deposit information will be released in stages. Initial surveys to prove it exists, then more detailed mappings only after Thornton has fulfilled his end of the bargain completely. Plus," Harper added, "I've taken the liberty of preparing affidavits from several witnesses who saw the aftermath of the incident at the saloon. These documents are sealed and stored in my office safe, to be released only if Mr. Thornton reneges on our agreement." Kate looked at Beau, uncertain. The deal wasn't perfect. Thornton would escape any real consequences for his violence against her, but it would clear her name, allow them to return to their lives without fear of arrest or further persecution. "What do you think?" she asked him softly. Beau's eyes were troubled. "I think Thornton deserves worse than this, but I also think spending our lives looking over our shoulders, waiting for him to strike again, is no way to live." He took her hand. "It's your decision, Katherine. You're the one he hurt." Kate considered this, weighing justice against practicality, the past against their future together. "Will the agreement explicitly prohibit Thornton from seeking any form of revenge against any of us in the future?" she asked Harper. Yes, with severe financial penalties if breached, the lawyer confirmed. Then I accept, Kate said finally. Not because I think it's fair, but because I want to move forward. I want us to have a life together without Thornton's shadow over it. Harper nodded, satisfied. I'll inform Mr. Thornton immediately. He's eager to conclude this business. If all goes well, the papers can be signed tomorrow and this ordeal will be behind you. The following day dawned clear and bright, a perfect Arizona spring morning. Kate and Beau rode into Cottonwood Springs with mixed emotions, relief at the prospect of ending their fugitive status, anxiety about confronting Thornton again, even in the controlled environment of a legal proceeding. Harper's office was on the second floor above the town bank, a respectable space with leather-bound law books lining the walls and a large desk dominating the room. When they arrived, Zeke was already there, his bad leg propped on a footstool, his expression grimly satisfied. Minutes later, Silas Thornton entered, flanked by his own lawyer, a nervous-looking man with ink-stained fingers. Kate felt a chill at the sight of Thornton, memories of his hands around her throat, his face contorted with rage, flashing through her mind. Beau must have sensed her distress because his arm went around her waist, steady and supportive. Thornton's cold eyes moved from Kate to Beau, then to Zeke, a mixture of contempt and calculation in his gaze. "Let's get this over with," he said without preamble. Harper gestured for everyone to be seated, then laid out the documents on his desk. "The agreement is as we discussed, Mr. Thornton. You'll find everything in order." As Thornton leaned forward to review the papers, Kate studied him, trying to understand the man who had caused so much chaos in her life. He was handsome in a cold way, his features regular and well-proportioned, his clothing expensive and immaculate. But there was something empty in his eyes, something hard and hollow that all his wealth and power couldn't fill. "The initial survey reports on the copper deposit," Thornton asked, looking up from the documents. Zeke produced a sealed envelope. "As agreed. Enough to verify the copper exists and is of high quality. The detailed surveys showing exact location and extent will follow once you've fulfilled all conditions of our agreement." Thornton's mouth tightened, but he nodded. His lawyer examined the survey reports, then whispered something in Thornton's ear. After a moment's consideration, Thornton picked up the pen Harper offered and signed the documents with a flourish. "Your turn," Harper said, sliding the papers toward Kate and Beau. Kate took the pen, her hand steady as she signed her name to the agreement. Beau followed suit, then Zeke, and finally both lawyers as witnesses. It was done. Harper handed Kate an envelope. "Your compensation, Miss O'Malley, $500 as agreed." Kate took it, the weight of it strange in her hand. It was more money than she'd ever possessed at one time, enough to start a new life anywhere she chose. But as she slipped it into her pocket, she knew her future was right here with Beau. "One more thing, Mr. Thornton," Harper said. "As per our agreement, you'll need to make your public statement regarding the mistake and theft accusation. I've taken the liberty of arranging for this to happen immediately. The editor of the Cottonwood Springs Gazette is waiting downstairs." Thornton's face darkened with anger, but he controlled it quickly. "Fine, let's complete this farce." They descended to the street where a small crowd had gathered, news of the meeting having spread through the small town. The editor of the Gazette, a thin man with spectacles and an eager expression, stood ready with pencil and paper. With visible reluctance, Thornton made his statement, declaring that the locket he'd reported stolen had been found in his home, that Miss O'Malley had been wrongfully accused, and that he deeply regretted the misunderstanding. The words were correct, but his tone was cold, his eyes never meeting Kate's. When it was done, Thornton turned to leave, but Kate stepped forward. "Mr. Thornton," she called, her voice clear in the morning air. He paused, looking back at her with undisguised contempt. "Yes, Miss O'Malley." Kate met his gaze squarely, unafraid now. "I forgive you," confusion flickered across Thornton's face. "Excuse me?" "I said I forgive you," Kate repeated. "Not for your sake, but for mine. I won't carry the weight of hatred for you into my new life." Something shifted in Thornton's expression, not remorse, exactly, but perhaps a glimmer of understanding that she had a strength he would never possess. Without another word, he turned and walked away, his lawyer scurrying after him. As the crowd dispersed, buzzing with this new development, Beau pulled Kate into his arms. "That was a remarkable thing to do," he murmured against her hair. Kate leaned into his embrace. "I meant it. Hating him takes too much energy I'd rather spend loving you." Beau's arms tightened around her. "Have I told you today how extraordinary you are, Katherine O'Malley?" "Not yet," she said, smiling up at him. "But the day is young." Zeke approached them, leaning heavily on his cane but looking pleased. "Well, that's done. Thornton won't bother you again, not if he wants that copper." "What about you?" Kate asked. "Won't he seek revenge once he realizes you've outmaneuvered him?" Zeke chuckled. "I'm too old and too ornery to worry about that. Besides, I've got plans of my own, that compensation money you got. I'd like to propose a business arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" Beau asked curiously. "A partnership," Zeke explained. "I've got the copper rights but no means to develop them properly. With your investment and my engineering knowledge, we could start a small mining operation. Nothing on Thornton's scale, but enough to provide a comfortable living for all of us." Beau and Kate exchanged glances, a whole conversation passing between them without words. "We'd need to discuss the details," Beau said finally, "but I think we're interested." "Excellent." Zeke looked more animated than they'd ever seen him. "We can talk specifics later. For now, I believe you two have some celebrating to do, being officially not fugitives and all." As Zeke limped away, Beau turned to Kate. "He's right, this calls for celebration, dinner at the hotel." "It's not fancy, but it's the best Cottonwood Springs has to offer." Kate shook her head. "I have a better idea. Let's go home to your ranch, our ranch, soon enough." Beau's smile was radiant. "I like the sound of that, our ranch, our home, our life together." They rode out of town side by side, the future stretching before them like the vast Arizona sky wide open, full of possibility and brilliantly, beautifully their own. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. With her name cleared and Thornton's threat neutralized, Kate returned to her job at the millinery shop, though only temporarily. She and Beau had set their wedding date for midsummer, just 6 weeks away, and there were preparations to be made. Mrs. Holloway insisted on making Kate's wedding dress herself, a gesture that brought tears to Kate's eyes. The older woman had become something of a surrogate mother to her over the past months, offering advice, support, and the occasional gentle scolding when needed. "You deserve some happiness, child," Mrs. Holloway said as she pinned the delicate lace overlay to the bodice of the dress. "After everything you've been through." "I've found it," Kate replied, watching as the dress took shape beneath the older woman's skilled hands. "More happiness than I ever thought possible." Meanwhile, Beau was busy making improvements to the ranch. With part of Kate's compensation money, they purchased additional cattle and 2 fine breeding mares, the beginnings of the horse breeding operation they'd discussed. Beau also started construction on an addition to the cabin, a proper bedroom, and a small sewing room where Kate could work on her designs. True to his word, Zeke had set their mining partnership in motion. Initial excavations confirmed the copper deposit was even more extensive than first believed. By the time winter came, they would be in full operation, with a dozen men employed and regular shipments heading east by rail. The day before their wedding, Kate stood on the porch of what would soon be their home, watching as Beau worked with a young colt in the corral nearby. The summer sun cast a golden glow over the land, highlighting the green of the distant pines, the rich brown of the freshly turned earth where their garden would be, the flash of the stream that cut through their property. It was beautiful not in the grand, dramatic way of Boston's architecture or even the rugged majesty of the mountains, but in a quiet, enduring way that spoke of home, of belonging, of a life built with purpose and love. Beau finished with the colt and came to join her, his shirt damp with sweat, his face alight with satisfaction at a job well done. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, leaning against the porch railing beside her. "I was just thinking how lucky I am," Kate said, turning to face him. 6 months ago, I was alone, barely scraping by, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake coming west. And now, she gestured to the ranch, to the life they were building together. Now, Beau prompted, his eyes warm as they moved over her face. Now I have everything I never dared hope for, Kate finished softly. A home, a purpose, a future, someone to share it all with. Beau reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering on her cheek. You know, when I stepped between you and Thornton that day, I had no idea I was really stepping into my own future. The best future I could imagine. Kate leaned into his touch. Do you believe in fate, Beau Blackburn, that some things are meant to be? I never used to, he admitted. Always thought a man made his own path in life through hard work and determination. He smiled, drawing her closer. But now, I'm not so sure. Seems too perfect to be just chance finding you. The next day dawned clear and perfect, as if nature itself approved of their union. The wedding was held at the ranch, a simple ceremony with Zeke, Mrs. Holloway, and a handful of friends in attendance. Kate wore the dress Mrs. Holloway had made, a creation of ivory silk and delicate lace that made Beau's breath catch when he saw her. Judge Wilson, who had ridden out from Cottonwood Springs for the occasion, performed the ceremony beneath an arch of wildflowers that Beau had constructed. As they exchanged vows, promising to love, honor, and cherish each other for all their days, Kate felt a sense of rightness, of completion that she'd never experienced before. I now pronounce you husband and wife, Judge Wilson declared, beaming at them. You may kiss your bride, Mr. Blackburn. Beau needed no further invitation. His kiss was tender yet passionate, a promise of the life they would build together, the love that would sustain them through whatever challenges lay ahead. The small gathering celebrated with a feast prepared by Mrs. Holloway and several other women from town, followed by music and dancing as the sun set behind the distant mountains. As darkness fell, lanterns were lit, casting a warm glow over the festivities. Mrs. Blackburn, Beau murmured as they danced, the name still new and wonderful on his lips. How does it feel? Perfect, Kate replied, her arms around his neck, her body swaying with his to the fiddle's melody. Absolutely perfect. Later, after their guests had departed and they were finally alone, Beau carried Kate across the threshold of their cabin, their home, in the traditional manner. The addition wasn't quite finished, but the main cabin had been transformed with fresh curtains Kate had sewn, colorful quilts Mrs. Holloway had contributed, and Beau's wooden carvings displayed on shelves he'd built himself. In the soft glow of the fire and the single lamp, they came together as husband and wife, their love for each other expressed in tender touches, whispered words, and the perfect unity of two people who had found in each other the missing piece of themselves. Afterward, as Kate lay in Beau's arms, listening to the steady beat of his heart beneath her cheek, she thought about the journey that had brought her here, from the grief of losing her parents, to the loneliness of striking out on her own, to the terror of Thornton's attack, and finally to the joy of finding love with this good, steadfast man. "What are you thinking about?" Beau asked softly, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. Kate smiled against his chest. "I was thinking that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us to the best ones. If Thornton hadn't attacked me that night, if you hadn't stepped in, we'd have found each other some other way," Beau said with quiet certainty. "I truly believe that, Katherine. Some things are just meant to be." Kate lifted her head to look into his eyes, seeing there all the love and commitment she felt in her own heart. "I believe it too," she whispered, before sealing their shared faith with a kiss. In the years that followed, the Blackburn Ranch flourished. The copper mine partnership with Zeke proved even more successful than anticipated, providing capital for Beau to expand their cattle operation and establish a reputation for breeding some of the finest horses in the territory. Kate, true to her dream, opened a small shop in Cottonwood Springs where she sold not just hats but dresses of her own design, pieces that combined Eastern elegance with practical Western sensibilities. Their family grew as well. 2 years after their wedding, Kate gave birth to a daughter they named Elizabeth, after Beau's mother. A son, Michael, followed 2 years later, and another daughter, Sarah, 2 years after that. The cabin expanded with their family, eventually becoming a proper ranch house with enough room for their growing brood. Silas Thornton remained a presence in Cottonwood Springs for several years, though he kept his distance from the Blackburns. The copper mine he established using Zeke's information made him even wealthier, but he never found the happiness that seemed to come so naturally to Beau and Kate. Eventually, he sold his holdings and moved to San Francisco, seeking the social status he'd always craved. Zeke lived to see his engineering expertise validated, the copper mine he'd discovered becoming one of the most productive in the territory. When he died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78, he left his share of the mine to the Blackburn children, ensuring their financial security for generations to come. As for Kate and Beau, their love only deepened with the passing years. The trials they'd faced early in their relationship had forged a bond that withstood the inevitable challenges of life, drought years that threatened the ranch, illnesses that frightened them, disagreements that tested their patience. Through it all, they remained partners in the truest sense, facing each day together with the same courage and determination that had brought them together in the first place. On their 20th wedding anniversary, they climbed together to the plateau where they had hidden from Thorntons so many years before. The hunting lean-to was gone now, collapsed under the weight of winter snows, but the view remained as breathtaking as ever. Miles of wilderness stretching to the horizon, the world spread out before them like a promise. You ever wonder what would have happened if we'd made different choices? Kate asked as they sat side by side on the fallen log where Beau had once carved while they talked of their dreams. If we'd left as we planned, started over somewhere else. Beau's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining with the easy familiarity of 20 years' practice. Sometimes. But then I look at what we've built here, our home, our children, our life together, and I know we made the right choice. Kate leaned against his shoulder, still as broad and strong as it had been the day he'd lifted her broken body from the boardwalk in Cottonwood Springs. The very best choice, she agreed softly. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple, Beau reached into his pocket and withdrew something small that caught the fading light, the wooden hummingbird he'd carved for her all those years ago, its wings still frozen in mid-flight, a symbol of the moment their lives had changed forever. "You kept it," Kate said, touching the carving with gentle fingers. "Of course I did," Beau replied, his voice rich with 20 years of shared memories. "It reminds me that sometimes the most beautiful things come from the most difficult moments." Kate turned her face up to his, the years falling away as their eyes met. In that moment, she was again the young woman who had found courage in his steady gaze, who had dared to believe in a future when all seemed lost. "I love you, Beau Blackburn," she said simply, "today and always." "And I love you, Katherine Blackburn," he replied, bending to kiss her with the same tenderness he'd shown on their wedding day. "Today, tomorrow, and for all the days we have left." Hand in hand, they descended from the plateau as darkness gathered, returning to the home and life they'd built together, a life born from a moment of violence but transformed by courage, honor, and a love strong enough to overcome even the darkest beginnings.